beautiful recipes for you, and we don't have any luscious looking food to put on a table, but we're just going to talk about the laws of how to keep kosher. First of all, number one, many people don't understand what is kosher, the most basic question. And the number one question to answer is like this: that kosher, and what some people think it is, that they say it's food blessed by a rabbi. Well, that isn't true at all. I know many people have that idea. They come up to me and they say, "Is that true, Rabbi?" And that is not the right answer at all. That kosher food, and the word kosher literally means to prepare. It's proper, meaning that the food is prepared in a special way. It doesn't mean that it can be gefilte fish or chopped liver. It means, and we're going to get into the different categories of food prescribed by the laws that the Torah has brought down to us. Meaning, for example, let's take animals first. An animal that has to have two signs for it to render it kosher. Now, it has to have split hooves, completely split, and it has to chew its cud. Well, of course, I hope you have seen an animal, but in any case, trust me on this one, that a cow does have both signs. For example, a pig has only one. It does have split hooves, and can check me out on this every time you go to a farm, but it doesn't chew its cud, so therefore renders the pig non-kosher. Other foods, well, of course, I think people know by themselves that a cow and cow's meat is what you usually get at a supermarket or a kosher market. Also, that is kosher. Other societies have horse, for example, but that's not in the United States in any case, so usual case is cow. Certain things that are interestingly kosher are deer, which means venison, and they're actually thinking about having kosher venison and deer meat in New York State, because of course, as people know, there are so many deer even in our local area, but there are so many deer, so they were thinking of that, and it's in the works. Also, it's a funny thing that people would think that giraffe is also kosher. Trouble is, the rabbis, and we're going to get to it, the way we kill, or we call it shecht, slaughter an animal, it has to be cut through the neck. They don't know which part of the neck of the giraffe to cut, so therefore they left in a doubt. They say better to do without it. Other kosher animals, buffalo. A buffalo is a kosher animal. But like we said, a pig or a horse is not, because they lack the two signs. Now, as we said before, that we just said that you just can't say, okay, you have a cow, good, it's kosher. That's not the end of the story at all, far from it. So now we have a kosher animal in front of us. And of course, we'll take the cow, which is your more typical animal that is used today. Now it's sitting in front of us, or standing, or whatever, and it has to be killed, or we actually call it in Hebrew again, the word is shecht, or literally means slaughter, in the proper way. Now this is an argument not in Jewish law at all, because Jewish law, it's clear as a bell of what has to be done. Some people want to say, and in England, and they have sometimes troubles in Canada, they want to say that the way the Jewish law prescribes to kill an animal is unjust. Well, that isn't going to be the case, and that's why exactly I wanted to bring out this issue to you, that the reason that they do kill the animal, and we're going to say the way they shecht it, is they take a sharp knife. Now, this doesn't mean just one of your kitchen knives or whatever have you, a bread knife. It's got to be smooth. It's got to be totally smooth, and when the shochet, who's the slaughter, the ritual slaughter, checks the knife, and he has to check the knife. I can't impress upon you enough how particular they are about these laws. I know of a certain case where that the shochet, the slaughterer, found out after he was slaughtering a number of chickens on the line they call production line, as they have it today, and they found a nick in the knife. The rabbi made the whole half a day's work non-kosher of many shekels, because they obviously, once they're slaughtered and killed, that they put them all in one bundle and they don't know whose is whose, and therefore they didn't know whose it was. They rendered it all non-kosher. Just can't impress upon you enough how particular they are. They take the knife and put it across the thumbnail just to be sure it's totally, totally smooth. If there's any nick in it, they got to work on it with a stone. Maybe it's worth to talk about it another time. Like, I just want to give a general overview to bring in a shochet and bring in how a knife is slaughtered. It'd be not a knife is slaughtered, how a knife is prepared for slaughtering, and just again, it has to be very smooth. Why does it have to be smooth? The next answer for that is very important, because and they cut the animal through the neck. Now what you do is you try to, it's not try, what you actually are doing is cutting through the jugular vein. Once the jugular vein is severed, the animal will die immediately. Now the question is pain. All right, it's dead, and no one can refute that. But what about the pain? Now, if it would have, that knife would have a nick in it, it would have a drag into the neck, and then it would cause some harm to the animal. As it is now, the simplest analogy that they bring out is that it feels like a paper cut. You get a cut, and ooh, look at that, a cut, you don't even know it hurt. Like if someone cut you with a knife, ooh, it's cutting into your skin, or like a bee sting or whatever have you, but like a paper cut that's so smooth, you didn't even know that it hurt you. Until afterwards you find out, oh, look at this, I have a cut. Same thing that it happens to the animal. It's so smooth of a cut they demand that the animal doesn't know it hit him, and then actually, obviously, it dies. So therefore, and I try to impress upon you, because like I said, it is a current problem. It really isn't the United States, but in European countries, in Canada, you always see these issues come up that they say, oh, we don't believe the ritual slaughter is actually kind enough to animals. And the rabbis demand that there is actually one of the 613 mitzvahs, commandments, is to not tsar bali chaim, it's called in Hebrew. It's called hurting or giving pain, literally, to an animal. This is a world that human beings can use and has the possibility to use, but on the other hand, and we talked about it a little bit with ecology, it doesn't give permission for anybody to go around destroying the worlds. That's why hunting is not allowed in Jewish law. Just to have a kick, so wow, I hit the mark and I hit an animal, it's not allowed. You feel like you want to be a marksman, go shoot at a target, but not at animals, and don't kill animals. If you need to eat, that's a different story, but again, like we say, it wouldn't be kosher for a hunter to shoot a bullet at something, or an arrow, or whatever have you, and kill that animal. It wouldn't be a kosher. Even though it's a deer, and we said a deer is a kosher animal, it has to be slaughtered in the proper way. All right, enough said, even though it's not enough said, because there's more to talk about, but we have to move on. So we have a cow, for example. We had a kosher animal that's slaughtered in the right way, and we're still not done. Now the animal, there's another kosher law that you're not allowed to eat the blood of an animal. Well, of course, once you get sever the jugular vein, most of the blood leaves, but of course there's blood in the body, and what we eat, the meat, is really the muscle. Now, muscle has a lot of blood. Now, what should we do? Now, again, each idea which I talk about really has I'm just trying to make it short in a short allotted time, but we'll come back another time and talk maybe about each of these ideas separately, but suffice it to say that we have to salt. And now this isn't your table salt, it's grain salt. Many times you will see it in the stores, in the kosher section of the supermarket. It's called coarse kosher salt. Well, there's nothing kosher about it. I mean, it is kosher, but it's just salt. But why did they say kosher salt? Because most people don't use coarse salt in their cooking, and that's why really the only time that they use it, for example, is to kosher meat. And what they do is they rinse off the piece of meat, they salt it, and it's got to be salted for at least a half hour. That draws this coarse, so see, the table salt will just be absorbed in the meat. Coarse salt will draw the blood out, then it has to be rinsed off, and then you have a piece of kosher meat. So it's very important. We see the human side of Torah again, because the blood is the life, it says. So therefore, it's not proper to eat the life force of the animal. It's enough to eat the meat itself. But the koshering process is very important. But one other thing that's very easy for us, and many people's their grandparents, maybe their parents, if they're a little older, when they were from youth, remember that you had, and we'll talk about poultry certainly, but poultry or animals, you had to salt it yourself. They gave you a kosher piece of meat, and you had to go home and salt it. Nowadays, because of the efficiency that they salt it, either in the butcher shop or even sometimes right at the slaughtering house, that they salt the meat. So that's, for the most part, even though, and I know we can say in the Capital District here, that they do this already for us, but on the other hand, that they for the kosher meat is even done in the slaughters, the production in the factory. But if you go out of town, be sure that it's needed to salt the meat. One little side note, again, just to make everything very short, liver is not only hard but impossible to salt because liver contains so much blood. You have to roast it on an open fire. An hibachi, for example, would be good, and or else if the butcher shop does it for you, fine. But just a raw piece of meat, you cannot treat it like any other piece of meat because it has to be roasted. It contains so much blood. And now we have a kosher piece of meat. Now we're going to the next idea. There's another law. You cannot eat kosher meat with milk. Now, many of these laws, and I should really say right up front, that there are no reasons for the kosher laws. We talk up many times, many laws in Torah are totally understandable. Don't kill, don't steal. What kind of society if everybody could just go around killing and stealing? That's ridiculous. Everybody understands that. Certain laws, you wouldn't come to it by yourself, but once they tell you a reason, oh, I got it. For example, resting on the Sabbath. Many people would work 7 days a week. Many societies did do that. But on the society of Jewish society tells you God created the world in 6 days. He rested on the seventh day, so you should also. Oh, okay, so I see the reason for it, and now we see the reason for Shabbos, even though maybe by yourself you wouldn't get to it. Like, don't kill and don't steal. If we said, how should we're different human beings, how should we set up a society? 99.9% of the people would just say, hey, we have to put don't kill and don't steal into our law system. Now, the third category is there's no reason at all for the mitzvah. There's no reason for the commandment being. The reason for why there's no reason is that God gave us these laws and says we have to be subservient to Him. And certain laws may say, well, this is beautiful. Yeah, don't kill, don't steal. Sure, that's proper. And, hey, a day off for Sabbath. Wow, that's a good thing also. So therefore, you might think it's a nice society, and I'd like to do all these kind of laws because it's a comfortable life, keeping Torah mitzvahs. But to do something that is no reason for it, no rational basis for it, then obviously you're not doing it out of comfort. You're not doing it out of because you think it's a good thing. You're only doing it because of subservience to the one who's commanded you. So that's one of the reasons it's kosher. And again, we should say it up front. Many people say it's because of hygiene, cleanliness. We just said ourselves, it's got to be a clean animal. The pig is a little bit of a dirty animal. All right, cow is a cleaner animal. Look at that. We have to salt the meat, take the blood away. We wash the meat. That's another cleanliness thing. Fine and good that they may be all these things, but really it doesn't hold water. It's not the real reason for keeping kosher. The real reason, because there's no reason at all, because it is a mitzvah and we do what we're commanded to. Many people don't keep kosher. They say, well, I know it's for cleanliness, and I know the local supermarkets are very clean and meticulous. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's another show, and there's really so much to talk about. And we will bring in, maybe we should bring in an interview also from the Consumer Reports from the state of New York. Not a rabbi, not somebody who's biased. The state of New York went in and saw, hey, listen, we have laws on the books in New York State about keeping kosher. Let's find out what's really happening in the slaughterhouses. So they took a big research, and that they looked into the kosher slaughtering factories and a non-koshering slaughterhouses, and they made many different big differences. And like I say, that's suffice it to say that there's a big difference in the animal and how it's prepared, the meat. But maybe we should talk about the consumers' affairs also about kosher meat. So milk and meat do not have a reason. That's how we started. But there are interesting, like we said, side effects. Side ideas for it. It says it wouldn't be humane to cook a kid or a little baby calf in its mother's milk. Milk, what is milk? It comes from a mother, obviously, a mother cow. And a calf, not necessarily, obviously, every animal that we eat is a baby. Could be an older animal, but on the other hand, it has to be it could be a calf, and many times they do slaughter calves or the veal. And wouldn't be humane to cook a little baby calf in its mother's milk. So that's maybe a nice reason if you want to think of it that way, meat and milk. There's just so many laws to talk about. I know I'm skipping over many things. I just want to get into another thing because these are the things that people ask me, so therefore I'd like to just bring out people's questions that they give to me, and I'm sure maybe it's many of the questions that our listeners and our viewers would have also. So therefore we want to bring out that's an important idea also, that it just to clarify your questions also, even though you're not asking them. One idea that many people ask is glat. Sometimes there's kosher, and then sometimes there's glat kosher. So what is glat? Glat is a Yiddish word, a Jewish word that means smooth. Glat means smooth. What it means is as follows. Now, besides being a kosher animal, like a cow, and besides being slaughtered, it has to go through one other process. And that is that an animal cannot be dying of a disease. Let's say it would be, let's say the rabbi said in a year, like it's dying. Maybe it's alive now. Yes, it's walking around, and it's a live animal, but it's dying. It's in a sickness or something happened to it. Usually they call this word treif in Hebrew. Treif means from the word torf, to be ripped. The classic idea of being sick, I mean that and the lion came over and like gored it or ripped it with its claws. And maybe it's alive still, but it's dying. Now, if an animal is dying, then it wouldn't render it non-kosher also. We have to have a live animal that's truly alive. Now, how do you know? Well, again, this is really these are laws how to be a rabbi when they were a rabbi or given ordination. There's tests to be given and answers to be given to the people who are giving the questions, and their laws are mainly on kosher laws. So there's very intricate laws here. You have to be really know the inside and out of a cow, and what its property has to be able to walk. Just many laws. It's really not the scope of the program here. Now, suffice it to say, what I want to bring out as glad is the lungs. Lungs are very important. You don't breathe. You've had it, obviously. Not going to be living too long. So they take out the lungs of the animal. They blow it up. And that actually it's called a bodak, someone who checks, and he checks it with his hands around the inside of the lungs. Now, therefore, are there any abrasions, or that means that there's something that is a little sick with these lungs? Well, it could be a disease, and that would render it not non-kosher. It wouldn't be glat. Glat means smooth, means the inside lining of the cow's lungs are smooth, which means they're not diseased, and therefore especially kosher. Many people, like I say, for that reason would hold by glat kosher. They want to be sure that the animal is really living, and but there are kosher that are non-glat, and that's where your difference is. It's a higher level of keeping kosher. So we've actually gone through the animal. Just review for a second that it's got to be an animal that has split hooves and chews its cud. Number two, that it has to be slaughtered in the proper way. We just said, and so for some people it's optional, that they have to be checked the lungs, and that it's glat, it's proper kosher. Once they have the animal, the meat has to be salted. And most of the animal, though, really is kosher. Even, for example, we brought out the liver before that. That actually cannot be salted, but could be roasted. And actually the heart, even though people don't use it, can be, even though obviously there's a lot of blood in the heart, but it can be kosher in its own way. It has to be cut many times so the blood can drain, obviously, out. Brains can be kosher. I hope people are not having a problem with this. But they can be kosher. Tongue, anyway, is a delicacy of the animal. There's really not too many problems of different parts of the animal. But there's one other part of the animal that is not kosher, and that's the gira nosh, it's called in Hebrew, the sinui vein, which runs to the bottom part of the animal. Now, the reason why that's not kosher, people have to go back to the Bible story. Yaakov had a fight with the angel, and Jacob had the better of the angel. But before the angel departed, he touched his hip of Jacob, it says, and then it made him a little bit lame, and it says, oh, from now on, just to remember that the Jewish people cannot eat the sinui vein. Now, in an animal, that runs the bottom half of the animal. Now, let me explain to you just some practical ideas here. That certain times, like we say, animals are non-kosher. Maybe the knife wasn't good enough, or it dragged in the animal, or certain things like we said, the lungs weren't smooth. Therefore, of course, you don't throw out a whole cow. No one has the money for these kind of things. It's ridiculous to even think about it. So therefore, usually and almost always with the kosher slaughterhouses, they're right next door in the same department or in the factory, whatever have you, as the non-kosher. So anything that's wrong with the kosher, they just give it over to the non-kosher and they sell it as non-kosher meat. It happens all the time, and in the Consumer Report, like I said, from the state of New York, it actually says certain things that they found diseased. They say they like a diseased wing. Don't get into the whole thing here, but they cut off the diseased wing and they give the rest of the chicken for parts to the non-kosher, where it wouldn't be kosher. Like I said, any disease on an animal wouldn't be kosher for the kosher department. So that's why the kosher is actually, many people have this idea, and many non-Jews I'm just talking about, that kosher is a high quality of meat, and really it is for that basis. That diseased meat that would be used for non-kosher would not be used for the kosher. Many, just by the way, many Muslims have kosher laws, and they also buy the kosher butcher shop. Like I say, many Gentiles go there not because of any kosher laws, they just want a higher quality of meat, which it really is. Back to the situation that you can pluck out this, not you, I'm just saying that someone can, but it's a very big expertise to do it. Sometimes it's more economical just to cut off that bottom half of the animal. Like I say, you don't throw anything out because it's just economical. So they just give that over to the non-kosher, and they use it for sirloin steaks or round roasts, that they use the backside of the animal. But it can be, and many times they do use the skin and they take it out, the sinew out of the vein, out of the animal. So besides that vein, you can, like I go back to the story, use really the entire part of the animal. I think we talked about most at the level of cows. Surely we can't get to the whole idea of kosher. We're going to have to continue next week. But we still have time to talk about the other kind of animal, and that is poultry. Now, truth to tell, that the poultry is not really an animal. It's not a mammal. But as a cow, for example, as a deer, for example, and that they reproduce differently, laying their eggs, of course. So therefore, it really is an argument, to tell you the truth, in the Talmud, is chicken or poultry, let's just say, kosher or not. I mean, not kosher, I just mean it surely is kosher, we'll get into it. But is it considered like an animal? What would be the difference? Can you use a chicken with milk? If it's like an animal, like a cow, no, like we said. If it isn't, it's a thing for itself, not like a cow, then maybe you're allowed to, because chickens don't have milk, that's what I mean, that they're not mammals, they reproduce differently. But the rabbis say that it's rabbinically, it's really not a cow, but it's close to being a cow, so therefore rabbinically, these are decrees to keep you away from doing something wrong. We consider like meat, and therefore chicken and milk is also not allowed. What makes a poultry kosher? Certainly not the same criteria as an animal, split hooves and chewing their cud. Obviously, poultry don't do that. But this is a thing that's given over in the Bible. It's Masorah, it's called, the way it is given over by tradition, that certain animals that are non-kosher, poultry, are written in the Bible. You can look it up, the ostrich and the raven. Again, we're lucky in the United States, the major bulk of poultry is chicken, and that is a kosher animal. I don't know what's next, duck or turkey. Maybe they use turkeys more. I don't know the production, but both of them, turkey and duck, are both kosher. And pigeon is kosher. I know people who have had pigeon. So these things, for the most part, and I think we're dealing with 99% and higher of the poultry that is used in the United States, anyway, is kosher. But remember this again. That's what makes it kosher. It's handed down to the Torah. We know a chicken is kosher, but it has to be slaughtered also the correct way. And it's, again, the shochet, the ritual slaughter, has a smaller knife. Obviously, doesn't have to have the same size knife for a chicken it is for a cow. It's a slaughter through its neck. It doesn't feel any pain. It's like a paper cut, as we said. It gets kosher that way. Its meat also has to be salted, as we just said about the cow, the same way. Washed off, salted, rinsed off afterwards, and then you have a kosher chicken. You're ready to make your chicken soup. But like we said, it is meat enough, not technically 100% meat, but it's meat enough, according to the rabbis, where the chicken or duck or turkey, whatever have you, poultry, cannot be used with milk or any kind of milk products in it. So it has to be completely separate. So we have the animal, and we really didn't get to too much any of the laws. I mean, we talked a lot about kosher, but I guess there's just so much kosher laws that have to be talked about. We're going to have to continue even next week to talk about the kosher laws and the different items that obviously that render that we're going to be talking about: eggs, wine, fish. That there's so many different things to talk about in kosher law. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about all these ideas next week. And again, to review the mammal, the mammals have to be a kosher animal by chewing its cud, splitting its hoof, slaughtering the proper way, checking the lungs if it's good, and checking the animal as a whole that it's proper, and then assaulting it. For poultry, it has to be given over to us, and which really isn't such a problem because, like I said, most people anyway eat in America chicken, duck, and turkey. Therefore, after that, it has to be slaughtered the right way, and then it has to be salted. And both animal and the chicken, poultry cannot be eaten with milk. We'll have to continue next week, please God, talking a little bit about more kosher. Thank you very much.